Hi everyone, and thank you for joining us again for another Bodhi video. Today I'm really honored to be joined by Tracy Matheson, who hopefully a lot of you already are well familiar with through her amazing advocacy work. But if you're not, you're going to learn all about the powerhouse that is Tracy. I really appreciate people like Tracy, and I say this with the utmost respect. Tracy is one of those ordinary people who is just living her life, doing her thing, when something truly horrific happened to her family. And Tracy, what you have done since that time has been nothing short of extraordinary. And I'm so pleased to share your family's story today and all the amazing things that you've been achieving. I think a lot of our audience will be familiar with the legislation and things that you have been doing, but not the lady behind it. So thank you for joining us. Thank you again for everything that you do to make the world a better place.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. So I'm going to start with the first question, which is probably always the hardest question. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened to your dear daughter, Molly, and how you were thrust into this bizarre world of advocacy and sexual assault reform and DNA reform across the country?
Yeah. And it's rather timely that we're having this conversation today because Thursday, April 10th, will be the 8-year anniversary of when I received a phone call that Molly had not shown up for work. And so I got in the car to drive over to her garage apartment, and that is where I found her body on the floor of her shower. And then quickly learned that she was deceased. Eventually, the police department arrived and explained they would be looking into the cause of her death. And I spent the next hours trying to decide what was going to be the better way for her to have died. He called the next day and told us they had ruled her death a homicide, that she had been strangled, and they also believed that she had been raped. And so we now had a cause of death, which there's not a good cause for any child to ever die, but an act of violence is a really hard truth to come to terms with. And as they began their investigation on who could be responsible, it didn't take long for them to identify a suspect, and that suspect was someone who, in fact, had been investigated multiple times for raping and strangling women in the state of Texas. Multiple opportunities, different agencies, prosecutors' offices had to take him off the streets. And for a variety of reasons, nobody did anything. And so it was the combination of my daughter is dead and there were these systemic failures that took place that kind of fueled my decision that I have to do something. I have to get involved. I have to try and impact change so that another mom doesn't have to know what I know.
Thank you for sharing that, Tracy. So following up from that, can you tell everyone a little bit more about Molly Jane's Law and the legislation that you've been successful in passing? And I know that you're not done and that you have more things in the pipeline.
Yeah, so one of the first thoughts that I had was there has to be a law that could have existed that could have saved her life. And so we started on that path in the 2019 legislative session in Texas and experienced what I think is a pretty unique journey through the legislative process where there was bipartisan support and very, very little to no opposition at all. And Molly Jane's Law was signed by the governor in September of 2019, and it mandates the use of ViCAP when there is an investigation of sexual assault in Texas. And we learned about ViCAP and the tool that it is, and how available it is, and it is free and underutilized, and was created to identify serial murderers and serial rapists. We know rapists are very rarely one and done offenders. They repeat again and again, and there are often patterns, and ViCAP helps to identify those patterns. And so it just makes good sense that if there is this tool available that's going to help you see those patterns, why would we not use it? And so it's sort of a common sense when we tell people what it is, they're like, well, duh. And so that's what we do. And all of a sudden, there's a whole lot of cases going in ViCAP from the state of Texas. And we learned pretty quickly that ViCAP works. There was a rape in Arlington, Texas. It was a case of an unknown, who took a girl off of a jogging path or a walking path, and the police they came up with nothing. They put the case into ViCAP because, according to Molly Jane's law, that's what they were supposed to do. There was a drug case in Tyler, Texas, and in the search of the house, there was a cell phone that they seized, and on that cell phone was video footage of a sexual assault. They went to ViCAP. They found Arlington's entry. They contacted Arlington. They said, "We think we have your guy." He was the guy. And he's now linked to sexual assaults in Texas or in Oklahoma. So because of the use of ViCAP, they were able to identify this serial predator. We passed a second law in 2023. There was a CODIS hit in the cases before Molly's murder, a CODIS hit that I believe could have changed everything had someone responded to it in the way that I believe CODIS hits should be responded to, and that is, wow, this is powerful. This is telling us that this DNA is connected to other cases, and so therefore, how can we reevaluate this case that we may have decided, oh, maybe there wasn't an actual sexual assault. Maybe there was a sexual assault. Maybe we need to go back. And so in 2023, we submitted House Bill 4628, which basically just spells out a framework of here's what the labs need to do, here's what law enforcement needs to do. When there is a CODIS hit, here are your duties, your responsibilities, and here's the timeline in which you have to carry out your duties. Some places get lots of CODIS hits, other places get hardly none. And so there's a wide range of understanding of what do we do. And so now we're evening out the playing field, letting everyone be informed on what it is that they need to do and how long they have to do it. The piece that I was emphatic that would be included in that bill was that a victim shall be notified when there is a CODIS hit. Our victim, Melissa, was not told about her CODIS hit. The case notes say, do not tell Melissa about the CODIS hit. And I feel like that's not law enforcement's decision to make. Is that an easy conversation? No. Does it need to be done in a trauma-informed way? Yes. But it is not someone else's decision as to whether or not a victim shall be notified. So that is written into the law as well.
So besides from changing the world with legislation that is very critical, you do something that I think a lot of people probably aren't aware of and probably don't even think about when it comes to responding to victims of sexual crime and how they're treated, and more importantly, how they're interviewed after this horrendous act has occurred to them. So you actually have a really neat project with soft interview rooms, and hopefully most people are very familiar. They very much look like Tracy's background here. Just a nice, calming area where survivors, victims can be taken, where they can talk about what happened to them, but it's not sterile. It's kind of safe. It feels like a living room at home. So that's what a soft interview room is. So Tracy, can you tell everyone about what you do to make sure survivors, victims are not interviewed in a sterile cinder block room with a stainless steel table?
Yeah. I tell people that's the one thing that the crime shows on TV do get right. When they show us those spaces that are cold, stark, and sterile, that is what interview spaces traditionally look like.
Mm-hmm. Very
and
much.
I started studying trauma, studying sexual assault investigation, what are best practices. I learned about a trauma-informed investigation and how the experts, the scientists can tell us exactly what's happening in the brain and how we've got it wrong for a long time, and we've messed things up, and we have mistreated victims who, because we haven't understood. And so I learned about this thing called a soft interview room. I did not invent the term. I just learned that it is a component of a trauma-informed investigation. And I had this idea that there's probably not an agency in the country that has a budget set aside to take their cold, stark, and sterile and give it a facelift. And so I thought, well, that I can spend the money that people donate to us and we can do that for them. We do not solicit soft interview rooms. We feel like that we need the agency to have already reached the place of, oh, we understand better. We now know that being trauma informed is important. We know we need to do things differently, and kind of bought onto this, concept. And then when they come to us and then ask, how do we get a soft interview room? How does that process work? And they're always, I think, a bit shocked to say, or to hear that I say, well, you ask, and then we say yes. And basically that's what it is. As long as the command staff is on board, and everyone is in agreement that this is something that they would like to have, then we put them on our wait list. The wait list is long. It's amazing how word is spreading, and the concept of being trauma informed and the commitment to being sure that everyone is trained in how to speak with victims of trauma and not interrogate them is becoming more commonplace. And so that is a good thing. And so we put them on the wait list, and when their time comes up, well, then we create a design plan. We tell them, please paint the room this color. And then we order all the items. We don't get into recording equipment, but all of the furniture, the art, the rug, decorative items, have it shipped to their location. And then, whether we can be there in person, or we have a volunteer from their local community who can be there on our behalf, or we just send them the instructions and the room gets transformed.
Yeah, and I think the great thing is it really doesn't cost a lot, right? Around $2,000. And I say this a little jokingly, but it's really serious. You could go to Home Goods or Target, not endorsing particular stores, but just somewhere that has nice little chairs and decor that you could put up in a room as well. And Tracy does have a long wait list, but also keep in mind that if you're covered under a SACI grant, it's a permissible use of those funds as well. So there's a couple of ways you can get a soft interview room for your jurisdiction if you need one.
And the other thing that has become more common of late because of our wait list, I tell the people who contact us, if they have funding, and it is between that $2,000 and $3,000 mark, and that might be, if it's not through SACI funding, maybe there's an individual in your community or a couple of individuals who want to make a tangible difference in their community, or there's local businesses who, and it's such a great way to support the work of law enforcement and victims kind of together. We will create a design plan. We'll send an email with a list of links, like click on this, buy 3 of these, click on this, buy 1 of this. So a shopping list. We will donate the art for the walls. And so and the wait for that is almost non-existent, and it costs nothing. We don't charge you to do that, but so it's another way to have the same end result, and involving those who want to be supportive of law enforcement. It's just because then they can come and visit it and see it and sit in it and know that it is impacting the work that is being done.
I'm hearing an avenue for local furniture stores.
Exactly. I mean, exactly.
Just so everyone knows, I'm going to put a link up to not only Project Beloved, but we'll put the separate link to the soft interview request as well at the end of this interview, so that everyone has it. So you and Project Beloved have been achieving great things, but what are some of the other things overall that you've been seeing that you think are really positive and have come a long way in sexual assault response since you kind of started your phase 2 in this arena? Is there anything that stands out to you?
Well, I do think that there is a change, a shift in the mindset, in those who are working in the field, the boots on the ground, those in law enforcement, those in prosecutors' offices, who are starting to realize that victims of sexual assault, especially, but those who have experienced really traumatic events, they have to be dealt with in a different way. If we're going to achieve justice, We cannot just keep doing it the way we've been doing it. And the shift is gradual and it's not complete, but I think that the recognition is there and word is spreading, and there are so many amazing people out there providing the training and helping to inform and support those who are doing this work so that they can do it better. And that is exciting. And I think our wait list is evidence of that.
Yeah.
When we first started, it was just a slow trickle. It was a constant trickle. But we were able to keep up with the demand, one room at a time, just every month. Let's do another room. And then eventually we said, okay, we'll do 2 rooms a month. And then we said, we'll do 3 rooms a month. And now we're doing 4 rooms a month. And that's our wait list is through February of 25. So that is super encouraging that, and the other thing that encourages me when I hear from those who have the room or those who heard about a room is the collaboration that's happening, where agencies who maybe do have a room, but they make it available to their neighbors. And I love that because, some communities maybe don't need a room in every location, but if there is a room that can serve, a larger area and there's a willingness to collaborate, I think sometimes people like to be very closed off in private, but this is one of those things where, let's share and we can all do better when we do.
That's awesome. I actually hadn't heard of that, so it's great to hear. Thank you for everything you shared with us today, Tracy. I would like to end by asking you a question more on a personal level. What would you like everyone to know about your Molly?
Molly, I called her my best friend. She called me her best friend. She was light. There's just no other way to say it. She was a bright, shining light. When she walked into a room, she made people smile. She made them laugh. She was such a good friend, a dedicated, just devoted friend. And she was ready to get out into the world. She was going to be a social worker, wanted to work with troubled youth. She was going to be so good at it because Molly just really had that heart that you would want someone to have who was going to work with a population like that. She she was she was my everything. I have 4 kids, but she was the only girl, and there was something special and unique in our relationship because of that. And we miss her every day, and this work that we do because of her and for her and in honor of her and all the others who experience the devastation of a sexual assault, that suffer in silence and feel like they can't share, or they don't deserve justice, or they feel alone. And it is our hope that by bringing sexual assault to light and helping people to know it happens too often to too many people, and we need to shift the way we respond so that it is done from a place of compassion and understanding and concern so that healing can happen. And that's what Molly would want. Molly would be here doing this with us if she could. And in a way she is, because it is her spirit that kind of fuels all of this.
That's amazing. And I think I've asked you this before, but do you think you would have surprised Molly with what you ended up doing?
I think so. She was a cheerleader of mine. There's a note that is on my chalkboard downstairs that she left. I worked in real estate, and she would come by my office periodically and visit. And she left a note that says, "Mom, you're the best realtor there is," or something like that. And she signed Molly Jane, your favorite daughter, or something like that. And she was a cheerleader of mine, and I think she would be like, "Wow, Mom, you go." She would be, I think she is proud and is cheering us along and encouraging us in her own way.
Thank you so much, Tracy, for sharing everything. Thank you for doing the good fight, for what you have achieved and for what I know you will achieve in the future. You truly are an amazing advocate. Like I said before, we're going to put a link to your website about soft interview rooms and how people can get involved with Project Beloved. But thank you again for being you and for doing awesome things to help survivors and families.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much.